This is the 8th of July, 2022, and I'm Bernie Herman in Conversations in the Kitchen. I'm sitting here with my long acquaintance and colleague, Mr. William Baines, and we're going to explore the work that has brought you back to the Eastern Shore and the long path that it took you to do that. So could you just start by telling us a little bit about your start on the Eastern Shore?
Well, I was raised in a little area, Painter, Virginia. I stayed in there till I finished high school. Once I finished high school, I just didn't want to work in the fields anymore, so I took the first bus heading to New York. I went to New York and I got a job until I was drafted in service. I was drafted in service and I went in service. I served 2 years and then I came out and I was looking for something to do. I needed a job to transfer to this area because I knew how it was when it came to being able to earn a living. So I took the post office test, and once I took the post office test, I knew I could transfer. Had a hard time getting the transfer, but I finally got it. And at that time, my father was dying of prostate cancer. So I came down because I felt that I should do my part in making life easier for him. So I came down to Virginia Beach, moved down later on after my wife and my sons had moved here and got settled. And we moved to a little place called Campus East, right over about maybe 2 miles from Virginia Wesleyan College on Diamond Springs. So there I used to work at the post office, and I said, hey, this ain't for me. So what I did was, I was doing landscape and irrigation on the side. And so some people said to me, why don't you just do this full time? You're good at it. So I went in one day, and it was sort of comical. I went in and I quit my job. I had a little money from selling the house in New York, so what I did was I bought a truck and all the equipment that I needed to do it first class. When my wife found out that I had quit my job, she wasn't too happy because I didn't say anything about it. But I went in one morning and I said, that's it for me, bye. So I quit the job and I started doing landscaping and irrigation, and I got better and better at it. And so what I did then was I said, hey, to myself, there's other things that I can do. So I started doing a lot of government work. And we got to be pretty big in government work. We control about 40% of the bases over there in Virginia Beach, in the Hampton Roads area, I'll put it that way. I got to know a lot of the admirals because I used to service that section of the base. All the admirals, anybody who was somebody, I got to know. And got to make quite a few good friends, which opened the doors for me a lot. I had seen this land for quite a long time that I wanted, and I said to myself, one day maybe it'll be for me. So this was before I was even married. I was courting my wife at the time, and I would drive down the highway to Cape Charles. So after we got married, I saw this land was still there. Stayed there for a long time, just growing up in weeds, and I said, boy, I'd like to have that. So one day, I was heading south to our parents' house, and I saw a for sale sign. That for sale sign just jumped out at me. So I turned around on the highway and went back and got the guy's name of the realtor who was selling the property. And I called him and I said, what do you want for it? So he said, I think it was $180,000. So I had about 100. So I said, wow, this could be a good thing. So in the travels, I had met this guy over in Virginia Beach. We were very close. And We used to eat about once a month at this little restaurant, you know, for breakfast on a Saturday morning, just sitting there talking and everything. So I was talking about that piece of property I'd seen. So he said to me, he said, by the way, this guy was one of my customers that I had met after I was installing irrigation and landscaping. So he said, you really want that, don't you? I said, sure. I love it. I've been watching it for a long time. So what happened, he said, I'll tell you what, you go in, here's the guy's name. You go into the bank. First, you call and make an appointment. You go into the bank and ask for him, set up an appointment. Okay, I set up the appointment and everything. And he said, I'll meet you there. I said, yeah, you will. I had very little faith. So, but, you know, so I went into the bank and the loan officer introduced myself and he said, your loan's been approved. I said, yeah, how? You don't have any information on me. And he looked at me and he said, I have enough. He said, you can come back, sign the papers whenever you want to. So just then, the guy walks in and he looks at me and he said, you happy there? And he was a very good dresser. I mean, a very nice dresser. He never wore socks in the wintertime. He didn't wear no socks, period. I mean, he was Mr. Cool. So he said to me, are you happy there? I said, yeah. And he turned around and walked out. So I looked at the loan officer and I said, who is he? And he said, well, that guy owns over 50% of stock in the bank. I said, Lord have mercy. And so later on I asked him, I said, well, why do you do that? And he said, because I like you, you were honest, and you never asked me what I did. So that's how I bought that land. And ever since then, I've been trying to get it to the point where I can say I'm finally there. But it's a never-ending battle. I managed to grow some halfway decent strawberries and some sweet potatoes and a few other little things. But now I have this problem with the animals. The birds, they love to just take and pick your seeds right out of the ground. They love to take and go from watermelon or cantaloupe to cantaloupe just to eat all the seeds and to antagonize me. So the deer comes and tramples on my plastic like I was putting holes in it. So it's rough being a farmer, but I can't complain because I have a love for the soil. I love to watch things grow. And if I want to take my shoes off after I plow and disc my land and just walk barefooted, I can do it. I wind up with dirty feet, but that's okay. I can go home and wash that off. But the thing of it is, I love the feeling of that soil between my toes. Because where I was born at, I worked in the fields until I was about 17 years old. I mean, I picked string beans, got up white potatoes. We would go in the white potatoes field before the sun came up. We finished sleeping on the bags. Then once the sun came up and they start plowing them up, we get up and get up potatoes. I picked string beans, I picked strawberries, I did it all. And I didn't mind. I would go to school in the morning with hands and fingers that would be red from picking strawberries before I went to school. But in those days, the teachers understood. People have got to work. And so they knew that the kids were out in the field making a living before they came to school. But today, no one seems to understand anything about anything. I mean, if you probably went to school and said, well, I had to go pick strawberries before I went to work, you're expelled. Just get out of my classroom. But back in that day, them teachers, they understood what it was like to have to work. I had to work. And I sort of enjoyed it. I'm still doing it. At 80 years old, I'm still working. And I don't know how much longer I will be, but I have this feeling that being close to nature is what it's all about. I can sit there, relax, go out in the field, work, and enjoy myself and have the peace and quiet that I need with nobody around me, no one to tell me what to do, no one to bother me. It's a good feeling. And when you get something done, it's like somebody gave you a pat on the shoulder. But my biggest enjoyment is, since I built the barn, the fresh market, I try to keep the vegetables fresh. But when the customers come in, I have met a lot of people from all over. I mean, from Maine to Florida. I've had them stop by the shop, and if you have something to sell, they will come. If you have a good product, they will come. And that's about the hardest thing, is trying to go to the market and buy good fruit that you know that didn't sit in a truck and spoil before you got it. But it's really interesting to see the people when they come in the shop. A lot of them just want to talk. Little old ladies. I mean, I remember when the pandemic, there was one lady, she said, "Mr. Baines, I've been trying to get to your shop since you opened. But the pandemic, COVID, was just where I couldn't go out." So she said, "I'll tell you what, I want to get," I think she had an aide. This aide drove around places. This aide, I said, "You come up here, I'll make sure that you're the only one in your shopping." So she came up and she shopped. And I kept people away from her. So, and she was happy. She bought all this stuff, but I said, "What are you gonna do with it?" "Well, I give it to my neighbors." You know, so it's a good feeling with the people that come in there. I don't worry about somebody coming in there that doesn't have enough money, the cash register's closed. You'd be surprised. I've always gotten it back. I let them have it. I said, "Well, you look honest, you'll send it back in." Till one day, I was out in the strawberry field, and this guy came from New York, him and his wife, young couple, in their 30s. So he said, "The only thing I have is a credit card." And this was before we were taking credit cards. He said to me, he said, "My wife would love to pick some strawberries, but I don't have no cash money on me." He said, "The only thing I have is a credit card." I said, "Look, this is what you do. Go out there and pick your strawberries, and you can take this card. He'll send it back." I wasn't worried about it. About 2-3 weeks later, I see this mail. I said, "Oh, who is this?" Open it up, and he had sent me the money for the product that he bought. So I'm saying, I never hesitate. If you come in there and you don't have any money, I want you to get what you came after. We'll work something out. It's not gonna hurt me. You know, I said, "Hey, maybe I'll get someone like a Bernie Sanders will come in and he'll say, 'Hey, I need this.'" I said, "Okay, Bernie, you got to pay 20% more for that person who didn't pay." But yeah, I used to have one customer. I had some very wealthy customers, and it took me. They used to call me Robin Hood because what happened is, if I had a little old lady over here who was pulling a hose, she looked like she barely could pull that hose to water her grass. I would put in that sprinkler system for her and discount it and let her pay by the month. I always got paid. This was money that came in when there wasn't very much coming in. But when I went across town and people had plenty of money, I let them know, "You're paying for that person who was not quite fortunate enough to pay." So never had any problem because my work spoke for itself. And they would look at me and said, you know, you're a Robin Hood. But the thing of it is, I enjoyed it. But a person always got what they paid for. And I never overcharged anyone. I would always keep my price moderate. But I had to make money. And now when it came to the government, it was a little different story. As they say, these large corporations have already said that after the pandemic, what they have done is they're trying to charge as much as the market will bear. And after a while, I said, hey, I might as well get some of it too. So I got a little bit of it. But hey, that's the way it is. You know, life is strange.
Well, I want to ask you a question. I want to go back to something that you said earlier. Where did your love of the soil come from?
Well, I can say this much. Most of the fields in Northampton County, I probably worked in because they probably picked cucumbers, tomatoes, string beans, sweet potatoes, white potatoes. I worked in those fields. I look at them today and I say, you know, that looks familiar. I worked at them before I went to school, after I got out of school, in the summertime. We worked in the fields. And it was not something you were ashamed of. I loved the soil. And most of the time I was barefooted anyway because I couldn't afford shoes. So hey, my shoes I kept for when I was going to school. You know, I would get a new pair of sneakers or something. I said, hey, a new pair of shoes. I will keep those shoes to out of school. So we went barefooted. It felt good until you tried to cross the street with that hot tar in the summertime. But other than that, I guess we crossed it, but I guess we had tough skin back in that day. But I wouldn't try it now. But I fell in love with the soil.
Most folks who've worked, done that kind of hard work, because it is hard work.
It's hard work.
I don't think many people truly appreciate just how hard it is out there. And most folks who've done that work won't go back to it. I mean, won't come back to the soil. They leave that part of their life behind. But you came back to the soil, and there's a love there that I would love to understand a little more.
Well, that love, I guess it has to do a lot with, I was raised back in the day. My father used to do a little sharecropping. It was hard work, really hard work. But you've got to love it. You've got to respect nature. If you respect nature, nature will be good to you. But if you abuse nature, she will reciprocate. I used to be able to just, since I got the farm now, I would come over here and at the end of the day, a lot of times I didn't even realize it was time to quit because I could get lost in what I was doing. That's how much I enjoyed that soil and just working, watching things grow. Say, oh yeah, this feels good. Or tasting that first strawberry that came on the vines, that white potato.
You know, for folks who don't know, because I know you do it now, from slip to the plowing up and cooking, but could you just sort of walk me through the steps and the seasons of planting the Herman sweet potato?
You take the Herman sweet potato, it's a finicky potato. What you have to do is, a lot of the people back in the old day, when the sweet potato vines would run, what they would do is they'd take that vine and they cut it. This is how they got their slips for planting for another year. They take them and they take and plant them, and the potato would not be as big because they were planting them for seeds. Well, today, the Herman sweet potato really got old because the guys didn't do that. They would plant the roots from the seed. So what I do is I'll take that Herman potato, bed it, and when the sprouts come up, I will take the sprouts, pull them from the bed, and I will cut off all the roots. That way you're leaving all of the disease free from that slip that you're getting ready to set out. Sometimes your land can hold, we call it scurf. That scurf can still be in that soil. So what you try to do is rotate and plant in different areas. You know, if you got enough land, you can plant here today and maybe come back 2 years later and plant in that same soil. But the Haman potato is very finicky. It's never going to give you no more than 2 or 3. But I have seen up to 8, maybe 4 large ones, and number 1s, and then you got number 2s, then you have the culls. It's quite interesting to watch them grow, and it's exciting to me how I can take and cut off all that root, all those roots, and put it in the ground, and it'll make new roots and grow. I've never quite understood how it happens, but it's a beautiful thing when you watch. You took all the, it's like taking your legs off your body and you're still moving. It's, you're cutting off, seem like the life of that plant, and you're taking that sprout that you cut off and planting that and throwing the roots or feeding it to the pigs or whatever you want to do with it. But they come up pretty, and that's how you get a really nice looking Haman potato. Because the soil on the eastern shore is ideal. It's perfect for the Haman potato. There are a few Haman potatoes that's grown probably up around Williamsburg and up east, upper shore of Maryland, eastern shore of Maryland. But nothing looks like that Haman potato that comes from down here. I mean, they get to be ugly, out of shape and everything. You can have a nice, smooth Haman potato down here. And I think it's because of the sandy soil. The sandy soil is very nice for that Haman sweet potato. It's ideal. And 90% of all the other vegetables that you grow here. It seemed like there was one guy was telling me, he said, look, he said, they used to call this the land between 2 bodies of water. He said, you can grow stuff here that you grow in Virginia Beach, and the taste is entirely different. That is true. These vegetables and stuff that's grown on the eastern shore is sweeter and it's better. And that's basically the story of that old Haman potato. But it goes back, but some years you may get something and some years you may get nothing.
What does the Eastern Shore taste like to you?
Well, that's sort of hard to, different people that probably taste different. But to me, that when I cook that Haman potato, I like to bake them in the oven. I'll take that Haman potato, and when I can take it out and put butter on it, I'll butter it, and if they're pretty, if you raise a good one, the skin is pretty, and it's nice and tender, and the skin tastes good too. I can take that potato, bake it, put some butter on it. After I wash it and clean it up before I bake it, and take that potato out, and sometime you can take a potato about the size of a quarter or half a dollar, and just take it and eat the skin and all. And the texture, it's hard to explain or describe that texture of that Haman potato. It's soft, it's sweet, it's juicy. If once you add that butter, it's like, the taste is hard. It's hard for me to explain that taste. It's just so good. But if you get a bad one, you'll know about it.
Well, for starters, it'll be woody.
It'll be woody. You can get them, and I'm going to tell you something. I've gotten them, and I tell people, I said, look, a Haman potato is very finicky. I won't say, well, it's very funny. I said, you know, you might get a good one and you might get a bad one. I cannot guarantee you a good ham and potato. But I said, when you get a good one, you will want more.
I want to shift a little bit because you grew up here in the late 40s and in the 50s, into the 50s before you left. Mm-hmm. And what was that like here?
Well, in the 50s, it was rough. Back in that day, you ate, but you ate from the land. My father couldn't go to the store and buy all of this food that like we have on the shelves today. Even if it was, he didn't have the money to purchase it. We used to have a little country store, the Budnett family up in Pana. That little store, my father would walk up there with me and my grandfather. We'd go up to that store. He didn't have the money. And what would happen is, she would trust him. Your word was your bond back in that day. And that's how we ate. He'd go up there, get what he wanted on the books. When he got the money, he'd pay her. But she always got paid. He used to tell me, you walk a country mile to pay a person a penny, because you never know when you're going to need that penny again. And that was the way we ate on Eastern Shore. And you know, people didn't mind you going into the fields, picking up potatoes, taking a few tomatoes home, taking a few string beans home. But yet, it was rough here. You worked for a little bit of nothing. I mean, the farmers, they didn't pay any decent wages back in that day. And back in that day, you were getting, say, like, I think I remember 10 cents a quart of strawberries. No, 5 cents. And the strawberries were nothing like the strawberries that we grow on plastic today. I mean, they were smaller, and you had to work harder to even get that quart of berries. But we worked in the fields. But life on the Eastern Shore was not ideal. That's why most of the people who left the Eastern Shore was because there was no work. These two counties, Accomack is doing very well. I mean, they seem to be building homes and people got jobs, better jobs. Northampton County seems to be slow. There's a reason for that slowness. They don't want anything in Northampton County. And certain people want everything for themselves. But the way I look at it, when you leave this earth, you're not taking anything. Nothing. But I remember a couple of times when I first came over here, I had a lot of problems. And if you notice my farm today, you would notice that I have a pond about 300 by 150. With my pond, you also notice there's a 6-foot fence around that pond. No farmer that we know in the state of Virginia has ever had to put a fence up around a pond. I was made to do it. That land that I own there, you can go back in the records and see that it has been rezoned about 3 times. When I bought that land, I qualified to be able to build about 40 houses on that land. It was taken out of the village and put in agriculture. So when you tell me about things that has happened in Northampton County, it has put a bad taste in my mouth. I don't like to talk about it, but every farmer in this county knows that it was wrong. It was definitely wrong. But I took it with a grain of salt. I've had a few people ask me, said, you want us to change it? I said, no, I don't want you to change it, because I want you to be able to see, and people to see what happened to me when I was trying to do something with that farm. I mean, there wasn't a meeting that I didn't go to, but there was one guy on that meeting who didn't even want me to have a pond 12 feet deep. The only reason I got that pond is because of a guy by the name of Joe Black. He was very instrumental in helping me get that pond. And the way I got that pond, I'll say it because I'm not afraid to say anything. Okay, I got that pond. I was going before the board that night. Corps of Engineers and everybody had said it was okay. I dug the pond. NRCS, all of them. So I didn't have no problem with NRCS because I used to work for them over on the other side. And the head guy, they used to have a little running joke about me. When I did something, if that line is supposed to be straight, I got to make sure it's straight. So I had them come over and they went through the land and everything. So the night I was going before the board, Joe Black had called me about a day earlier, and he said, Bill, I want you to go over on 600 and I want you to look at that pond. He didn't tell me who owned the pond. I went over and looked at that pond. It was pretty. The water was light blue. You know, I've seen one pond like that, and that was in Chesapeake on Greenbrier. So he said, call me back when you look at that pond. I said, okay. He's in Florida now. I called him back, and he said, Bill, that pond is 35 feet deep. I dug that pond. So the night of the meeting, I went before the board, and I said to this guy, chairman, I said, man, I would like to have a pond just like yours. So he looked at me and he smiled. He knew I had done my homework. And there was another guy who only wanted me to have 12 feet. So that's not even a pond. That's like a watering hole. So the chairman, he said, Mr. Baines, we're gonna let you have 15 feet. That's how I got a 15-foot pond. Because number one, he knew that this person had told me how deep that pond was, and you didn't want me to have 35, you didn't want me to have, you got a 35-foot pond, and you didn't want me to have a 15-foot pond. So I said, okay. So I got that pond, and the people were amazed because they had never seen this chairman disagree with this guy before. He went against this guy, and they said it was the first time. But he smiled at me. He knew that I had done the homework. And when I said before all them people, I want a pond just like yours. That's how I got my pond. Took me a while, but I had to go before the board to get the pond. But when I renovated those two houses in Cape Charles, a lot of people knew about my work and my word. And I did those two houses, and when I went before the board, everybody wanted to sign off on it because they were tired of those two dilapidated houses, and they wanted to, get on board. So I did those two houses, and those two houses, about two of the best constructed houses in Cape Charles. Right now, you go by 550 and 554 Madison Avenue, you'll see them. I did one because I said, maybe if I'm nice, my wife might want to move back to the shore. No, she said, there isn't enough shopping centers. So I said, okay, so then that's when I decided I'd just go ahead and sell it. But that house had everything in it. Central vac, speakers in the ceiling, air conditioning, full everything. Split system. So I sold it, to my regret. But anyway, hindsight.
Well, it's always 20/20.
Yeah.
What do you see as your legacy for the Eastern Shore?
The legacy for the Eastern Shore. Well, they can say some good things about me, and they can say some bad things about me. But they will say that no matter who you were, when you came in that shop, everybody, regardless of color or anything, were treated the same. I make sure people are happy. I don't care who you are. You walk in there with a cane or whatever, I'm gonna treat you just like you would if you walk in there straight. I want to make sure that everybody is treated the same. I don't discuss my political views, but I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I've had Republicans put up a sign out there. I've had Democrats put up a sign up there. And it tickled me. I had this one lady, I think I had a Biden sign up there. And they come in, they put them up, and sometime I said, hey, they don't even ask, put up the sign. You know, so she came in and she said, y'all got that Biden sign up there. I ain't never coming in here anymore. So I said, okay. I said, okay. Take that sign, you need to take that sign down. So I said, no problem. So she didn't buy anything, she left. So we saw her friend down in Cape Charles at the Brown Dog getting some ice cream. So she said, my friend will not come back in anymore. I said, well, she's missing out on those strawberries. She said, oh no, she ain't missing out on the strawberries. I have to go get them for her. So the thing of it is, she's still eating those strawberries, you know, but I'm saying, hey, I have, just like when Dave Farber was running, he came to me and said, Bill, can I put up your sign? Can I put a sign up? I said, Dave, have at it. Dave Farber, we may have different political views, but one night at a meeting, when I was doing the House of Cape Charles, Dave Farber stood up and he said, let me say something to you. If Bill Baines says he's going to do something, you better believe he's going to do it and exceed your expectations. So hey, man comes up, I don't care what you come up and you ask me, can you put a sign on my property? You can put a sign all around the property. I don't care. Because, hey, I know where his heart is. Mm-hmm. And that's the most important thing, you know, where our person's heart is. Because the way I look at it, we got to live together. And that's why I said, when you come in that shop, people will tell you how we treat them. Everybody is going to be treated A-okay. And I don't want to hear anything. And I used to take, when I was running my company, I used to take the philosophy that Sears Roebuck. If you have something that's not right, bring it back. We will honor it. And I used to buy batteries from Sears, and they were very good batteries. But if I had to take one back because the warranty was not, what it was expected to be, they'd take it back. So when I ran my business over there, the customer's always right. They're the one that's spending the money. And I have some very good customers. I always said, anybody who was somebody I had. And it was quite interesting because these same customers, in the wintertime, it would get slow. And they would call me and say, Mr. Baines, I know you're not doing too much. Would you go and put my nephew or my niece in a sprinkler system? I said, I don't like him, but hey, go over there, we'll give you some work. I'd go over there, do the job. That job enabled me to keep going. When I first started out, it was rough. The banks wouldn't give me no money. They would not give me any money, no matter how much, until one day we had quite a sum of money in the bank. That was BB&T. And here comes the loan officer. You know, hey, you need anything we can do for you? You have to have money to make money, and you have to have money to be able to get money. Poor person finds it hard to go to a bank and try to get a loan to start a business. This is what's happening to the small business in this country today. They can't get the money to start and operate that business profitably or to a point where they can breathe without going to bed at night and saying, well, how am I going to pay this? How am I going to pay that person? How am I going to pay that? That's why I knew when I was putting up that building, I didn't go to no bank. I'm retired, so I get my check every month. So, hey, a couple of them. So I was tearing down a few houses for the Cape Charles and county. I take a lot of that wood, and I take that wood and save it. A lot of the wood in that building came from old houses, and that wood you can't buy today. It's just like this old building here. Those are true 2x8s. And when you measure it, you can get 2 inches by 8 inches. It's not like a 2x8 today. You're lucky if you get 1 3/4. You're lucky, maybe 1 5/8 by 7 1/8 or something like this. So the building, I said, okay, if I put it up this way, it's gonna take a while. I won't owe anybody anything. So I did it piecemeal. As I got the money, a little bit here, a little bit there, and that's the way I built that building. And then when strawberry season come, everything went back into the business. Everything. You know, I probably didn't even treat myself to a nice bottle of champagne or anything, but it went back into the building. So now, that building, I don't owe anybody anything on that building. But I knew that going to the bank was unheard of. But the thing of it is, a lot of people, a lot of kids want to go out of business. Kids that graduate from college are geared to, most of them, to work for somebody. They come out of school, the first thing they're going to do is go out there to Fortune 500 company and look for a job. They're not geared towards starting their own business. They'll go work for somebody for 2 or 3 years, and then they say, man, I can do this for myself. Then that's when they come out and they said, I'll try it. But if they could get the money to start that business and not have sleepless nights because you can't make a payday or something, it would be a much better place, because small businesses are hurting now. I mean, you go over there and see some of the places in Virginia Beach and these big shopping centers, they've had to close those businesses. And some of the larger companies have had to close. And the money, this country is a very rich country. But when it comes to small businesses, it's the backbone. Oh, they're very good about taking all the taxes and everything from you, but when it comes to the banks loaning, hang it up, especially if you're a minority. Mm-hmm. And I used to be faced with this when I was in business, where they didn't think that a black man could run a business. Even if I got the business up and running, I had a friend, a good friend. I had $4 million in contracts. No money, no equipment. I called this friend of mine in New York, and I said, hey, you got any money laying around? I didn't want no whole lot. Don't take a whole lot from me. He said, how much you want and what is your routing number? He sent me $400,000 straight to the bank. never signed anything. He said, you are all business. He said, you're serious. He said, when you decide to do something, you do it. He knew me for quite some time. He said, you get it done. So I took the contract on the basis, had 3 bases, and bought all new equipment. We looked good. We were talk of the area. One year we would run up for business person of the year, small businesses of the year. So we took that. I ran a tight ship. I had up to 150 guys, 130 headaches and 20 good guys. But when people came out on the base, the first thing they said, they would never come to me, and I had whites, black, everybody working for me. They would always go to the white guy and said, and start talking. So I had some pretty squared away guys. I mean, hey. And they look and say, well, they let them talk. I said, well, why are you talking to me? Here's the boss over there. They were shocked. The first thing they want to know, is this a franchise? It was not a franchise. I ran a tight ship because I was out there working with them. And it was quite interesting because they didn't think that a black man could own so much and do it right. We did a very good job. I remember one night I bid it on a contract. The lady would not, the contract officer would not give it to me. She would not award that contract to me, simply because she had one guy who had caused the downfall of 2 small businesses already. She wanted me to hire him. So I told her, I said, let me say something to you. I said, if I fail, I said, I can fail by myself, but I don't need any help. So she would not award that contract to me. So it took me, I was over in Portsmouth, working at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. We had that contract. And the duty officer went to next to the commander of the base. He called me, he said, Mr. Baines. No, first, he called 3 times, I hung up on him. I hung up on him. Because I knew he was calling from NOB. So the 4th time he called me, I said, look, let me tell you something. I don't have the contract, y'all will not award the contract. Look, I got work to do, just leave me alone. So he said, Mr. Baines, tell you what, you come to NOB and fix this job up, do this job for me. He said, I will personally walk into contractor and tell them to award you that contract. So when he told me who it was, I said, okay. We moved so much stuff down the highway until we had a escort. We went straight into base. We worked out there, I worked beside him. We had about maybe 70 guys. I had trucks bringing in everything, it was calling in all favors, because he told me how important it was. So we finally got it done. So I didn't know who was coming. So he said, the president's coming. It was Bill Clinton at the time. So we fixed that base up. He was coming to Flag Row, they call it. That's why all the 4 stars and the sub-commanders. So what we did was we got it straightened up and everything, and I pulled the people off the base and we went back to Portsmouth. So he called me the next day. He said, I want to meet you over at contracting. He walked into contracting, and boy, it wasn't a nice time. But when we walked out of there, I had the contract. And that's how I got Flag Row around all the Mavericks and everything, was because the president was coming, and they needed somebody to clean that base up. And we did it. And he said, thank you. So, hey. But yeah, I've had an interesting life when I ran the business. I met sons, fathers of sons that will call me and said, "What do you do when we have this kind of a problem?" I mean, money problems, wealthy. And because they knew I was close to their father and I was honest. I had one, was 3 brothers. And he said to me, he said, "Mr. Baines, we got a problem." 2 of them called me. He said, "We need some advice." He said, "We have one brother's not doing what he's supposed to be doing." So I said, "You sure you want my advice?" "Yeah." So I gave him the advice. I said, "Buy him out." They bought him out. And I said, 2 or 3 years go by, and may not speak to you. But then once he come to his senses, he'll start speaking. Now they're speaking. But, I mean, they were wealthy. But I knew the father. And a lot of people spoke very highly of me because I was trying to be honest. If I tell you I was going to do something, I would do it. If it hurt me, I'd do it. But life is strange. I just wish that the banks were more cooperative when it came to loaning small businesses money to get started. There's a lot of young people out here with bright ideas. And I look at the young people and I say, hey, this is our future. We're old. We're old school. With us, it's going to die a lot of those old ideas. But we would like to think that we're going to leave this earth and leave it in the hands of young people who can take it and run with it. And some of them are taking it and running with it.
And that's your legacy.
That's my legacy.
Well, Mr. Baines, I want to thank you so much for spending time with us today. And, you know, of course, I'm always there for strawberries and sweet potato season.
Yeah.
But you've just been really wonderful to listen to tell these stories and to share so much. So thank you for joining us in this conversation in the kitchen. And I'll see you soon on the outside.
Okay, I appreciate it. And now it's back to the dirt. Okay.